What's going on with the truckers? On this trucking channel, we talk everything trucking, how to make money in trucking, and definitely the news that's happening and why it actually happens. Today, we actually have the president of OOIDA, that actually is fighting for independent owner operators out there in America. And here's the thing, he actually exposes on the channel why all these crazy rules, why we don't have broker transparency, why we don't have more truck parking, and definitely why they're trying to put speed limiters and hike up our insurance for truck drivers. And he pretty much said, it's the big dogs, it's the big mega carriers. They're the ones that are whispering in the ears of the FMCSA and the DOT to let them know that they need these rules and regulations. Why? To take out the competition and so that they could be above the competition. This is crazy. I never thought of it like this, but it makes so much sense. Let's welcome, President of OOIDA, Todd Spencer, on the show. Thank you so much for being on the show.
When I said a minute ago that DC and the policymakers, the lawmakers respond to economic interest, that's where most of these regulations come from. They don't come from government folks just sitting around saying, what can we do? Some come to these folks and say, these are the things that you should do. And certainly we see that with speed limiters. We watched it play out with electronic logging devices. FMCSA didn't want to do that, and they never would have. Congress said you have to do it, and Congress said you have to do it because big carriers said we need an ELD mandate. And these same folks right now are telling lawmakers we need a speed limiter mandate.
How are you doing, sir?
Fine, and you?
I'm doing great.
Put your appropriate props on display.
Somebody made this for me, and I had this little cup, and I was like, you know what? Let me put this little display in there. We got the famous Todd Spencer here. We got to have a conversation.
Famous, huh?
I'll tell you what. I've been watching a lot of the things that you've been doing and talking about. Like when I watched the one where you did, I think a few years back, actually, or let me know if I'm wrong. When the FMCSA is looking at making 18-year-olds being able to go interstate OTR. And I loved it when you said that, no, they should be raising the bar for safety.
Well, sure. If you actually look at safety numbers, you don't take the age down, you take it up. Minimum should be 25.
I'm telling you, some of the things they're doing, and I made that little video talking about, one of the biggest gripes that independent trucker drivers have is definitely broker transparency. And there was a really nice letter that you wrote about that. But I remember 2 years ago when they went down to Washington, D.C. and they shut it down, and it was a big deal, and it kind of went into the wind. Yeah.
Well, there were economic factors that came into play then, but also, while those guys were sitting there blowing their horns outside the White House, suddenly our economy for truckers had suddenly kicked into high gear, and suddenly there was a great need for trucks, and people didn't mind paying more money for those trucks. So the guys that were sitting there in DC were kind of left out of that. But when you talk about these issues, next year OOIDA will celebrate its 50th anniversary, and many of these issues we've been working on for virtually all of this time.
That I think sometimes that might be the little miscommunication is people feel that these are the main issues, broker transparency, more truck parking, higher pay, right? A lot of the gripes that truck drivers had for so many years. And people are like, why is nothing being done? But what I'm learning, because I had an opportunity to go with NATSO a couple weeks ago to Congress, progress and process in their setting is very, very slow.
Well, realistically, Washington responds to economic interest and special interests, and truckers have to be one too. And that was the principal reason that OOIDA was formed almost 50 years ago. And, at that time, it's funny because at that time was the creation of OPEC, the very first Arab oil embargo 50 years ago. And it had a dramatic impact on truckers because fuel prices virtually doubled overnight. And there was more to it than that, in that, quotas were, supply was limited. Truckers were faced with going to a truck stop and, paying an inflated price for fuel, but they could only buy 25 gallons, which would be basically enough to get them to the next truck stop.
Right.
So they do it again. And truckers stopped all over the country. And what the catalyst for that was fuel. But all of these other things, or many of these other things, were basically also long-standing gripes. And of course, through the years, the size of the trucking industry has more than doubled from what it was back then. And yet, the amenities, the truck stops, the parking places, there's no more now than there was then. So, and it's just pretty much an impossible situation. And, we hear these folks talk about driver shortage. Well, what they don't say is we can hire plenty of drivers, and we do. We just can't keep them because people burn out quick. And they burn out quick because of the environment and because realistically pay hasn't kept up from where it should be.
And see, and that's the thing that I think gets portrayed in a narrative sometimes that people believe to push more like that autonomous and self-driving semi-truck, right? And so what are your thoughts about taking a truck driver out of the semi-truck, hauling down 80,000 pounds?
Well, it seems pretty crazy to me. I mean, it really does seem crazy to me. Having said that, we've seen tremendous advances and evolution in the capability of technology through the years. Yes. And basically of late, it's even more so. And those people that produce the technology are going to find applications for it. So, certainly the possibility of autonomous cars, autonomous trucks, that's going to be something that's worthy of investments. And, these folks have a lot of money to invest. And of course, they also have a lot of money to use to influence policymakers and lawmakers. So, I mean, it's there, it's on the horizon. And certainly you can bet big trucking companies, if they see an opportunity to reduce or eliminate their cost of labor, they will. They will. And of course, that's going to be an economic reality. But, from our perspective, is that our guys have to share these roads with these vehicles that, we think are totally unpredictable. So certainly safety is the highest priority for those folks that spend their life out there on the road. And that's most of our guys. So.
No, I love it. I love it.
Listen, what I would like from you is, we've been an advocacy organization on behalf of truckers for almost 50 years. The founding members of OOIDA recognized early on that, okay, we can complain about things, but if we actually want to have an impact on policies and procedures and regulations and how we're going to be treated going forward, we have to be here on a full-time basis. Policymakers, lawmakers can't just hear from truckers whenever they've got a gripe. They need to be educated on a full-time basis, and that's what we set about to do. The biggest challenge that we've had through all of these years is getting enough truckers to buy in, to understand. A few bucks is certainly a pretty small price to pay for having effective professional representation where it's needed. And, that's always the case because, while we have, there are, when I said a minute ago that DC and the policymakers, the lawmakers respond to economic interest, I mean, that's where most of these regulations come from. They don't come from government folks just sitting around saying, what can we do? Some come to these folks and say, these are the things that you should do. And certainly we see that with speed limiters. We watched it play out with electronic logging devices. Uh, FMCSA didn't want to do that, and they never would have. Congress said you have to do it, and Congress said you have to do it because big carriers said we need an ELD mandate. And these same folks right now are telling lawmakers we need a speed limiter mandate.
Well, see, wow. So, okay. So, for the people that are being confused, the government, the FMCSA, Department of Transportation, that's not per se the wall that we're trying to break through. It's somebody is going to these people that make laws.
Oh, absolutely.
And saying, we need this. So
absolutely.
We're hearing speed limiters. It's not the Secretary of State of Transportation. It's the big mega carriers saying, hey,
absolutely.
We need speed limiters. Wow.
That's
okay.
right.
Okay.
And the reason, the reason is because, while all of those companies are free to do whatever they want to do, put speed limiters on your trucks, put ELDs, and whatever you want to do, that's up to you. That's your business. But when you start, but they want to mandate it because they want the mandate to apply to you, their competition. So that way they close the door that their drivers would have from saying, hey, I don't want this crap, I'm out of here. And they have no place else to go because everybody else has to do it too.
Wow.
So that's to the madness. And, again, the ELD was a bitter pill to swallow for most truckers. We did everything we could to stop the legislation. We did everything we could to stop the legislation after it actually went into effect. We sued at every level of the court, and in the final analysis, the U.S. Supreme Court decided they wouldn't review it. So that's the end of the line.
Would you pretty much agree then that the big companies out there are pretty much the ones behind almost every rule and regulation that truckers have been having to deal with in the last century?
Absolutely. Well, absolutely. And look, they look for opportunities to try to find ways to pat themselves on the back about things like rest areas. Well, they haven't been pushing rest areas. They haven't been pushing the need for parking because it wasn't an issue that actually affected them. It was just the folks behind the wheel. And, they can listen to you and then they'll go home at night and sleep in their own beds. They don't have to hunt to try to find a parking place. So we, OOIDA, small truckers, have made this an issue. And it is an issue in D.C. right now. FMCSA is fully aware of it. They talk about the problems to do it. We're doing everything we can to make all of the federal money that can be available made available. Certainly, DOT can grant some money, and they're doing that now with states. And we're seeing that with rest area, with increases in rest areas in Florida and I think North Carolina, and there'll be some other states. But having said that, we have to motivate states to actually make that a priority. And we have legislation currently pending in the House. It's HR, 2187 is the House bill that puts in about $760 million that's for dedicated parking. And this would be dedicated parking that would be, that can't come with a fee. It can't be paid parking. Now we have to get a Senate bill, a companion bill in the Senate. And we're working on that, and we hope to have that. Introduced pretty quick. But I mean, these are things that truckers themselves can support and get behind and make their work environment better. And if we don't do it, it isn't going to happen. It isn't going to happen. We're going to have to be the one that makes noise about this.
No, and I understand that. And I'm telling you right now. A couple people watch me on social media, Todd. And so if there's anything that's ever needs to be a voice to the many, and when I say the many, the owner operators, the truck drivers out there in America, I feel like that's our disconnect sometimes, because as independent truck drivers, we know what we have problems with, but we don't understand how we can help that problem. And so when you guys are doing something that might need opinion from the masses, a survey showing the FMCSA that, look, truckers do care about this. This is something that I would love to be a part of, and be able to let the masses help know, hey guys, right now, you guys need to vote on this survey or what have you, because the $700 million that's going to possibly go to granting for trucking all across America, we have to fight for it. You need to go to your local officials or whatnot. So, let me know, Todd, how I could be a part of this. I just want to help truckers. My family are
Sure.
truckers, and that's pretty much what I'm about. And you are the real deal. I've seen you around. I've seen you talking, and I agree with a lot of things. I don't usually agree with a lot of things that people say, but a lot of things you're talking about, they make sense to me.
Hey, I used to do this stuff. I used to drive. Every officer, every board member of OOIDA either is now or was a trucker. We know what we talk about from personal experience. And,
I
it
love it.
was a lot more friendly environment for drivers when I drove long ago. Having said that, being pressured, shippers, receivers, the parking issues, they've been a problem for a long, long, long time. And again, uh, nobody really feels the pain that drivers and the anguish that they go through more than drivers, and nobody's going to take it as seriously. And again, our folks set up, founding members of OIDA said, look, guys, we're going to create an organization for you, support it, and we'll work to make things better. And we've been doing that for almost 50 years now. The biggest challenge we have is, hey, getting buy-in from those folks behind the wheel. And I would encourage everybody that listens to your show to be a part of a OIDA. I mean, our membership fee is $45 a year. Now, that ain't much for professional advocacy, and we do that. We have an office. We've had an office in DC for years and years and years. We do our best to educate lawmakers, to policymakers, and on what needs to be done, and basically how they can be helpful. But if folks don't hear from you, if they don't understand your issues, and of course your issues have got to be real. They've got to be, you can't go blowing smoke or hollering and screaming and saying stuff that isn't true, because people recognize BS too.
Yes.
So got to be straight up, understanding, try to meet people where you can in the middle. But again, DC responds to organizations, economic interest, and we see that in every policy that comes out of there. And look, truckers are essential to this country. The pandemic certainly showed that over and over and over. Anytime there's a disaster like what's going on down in Florida right now, it's our folks that step up to meet the need. And certainly they deserve a fair break. They deserve a decent quality of life. And if we want to have them, and we're going to need them, because autonomous trucks are somewhere in the future, but boy, they are so far off when it comes to actually meeting the needs of store shelves and things like that, that, hey, we're going to need drivers the best for a long time. And
no, I love that. It's one of those things where maybe that's something that we could get a bill placed in that, you want to have self-driving technology, fine. But a professional operator has to always be in that cab at all times, because unless you can say 100% that this truck will never default and never have error, you need a professional. And if we could do that, Todd, we could save trucking for a very long time,
Well, yeah, I mean, that's just common sense, just reality.
Right.
I should also, we have a website, fightingfortruckers.com. You don't have to be a member to access the website, but if you go there, you'll see the hot issues, the timely issues, and we've created a mechanism where you can communicate, submit comments directly to FMCSA, send letters to your lawmakers on these issues. We make it really easy. That's fightingfortruckers.com. And, the issues that are on there right now are certainly FMCSA is considering modifying the rules for ELDs. So trucks older than 2000 models would be required to have them. We've also got a link up there to the provision of the Fair Labor Standards Act that would remove the exemption that exists for truck drivers only from being paid overtime, which we think is bizarre that would ever have been in there to start with. One on parking, and also on speed limiters, and on, increases to insurance, because, while it is bigger carriers that want to see increases to insurance, because again, they know that would have a greater impact on their competitors. And, for the most part, most of the folks that are in trucks are you're either labor or competition. That's how you're viewed by the big carriers. And either way, they don't like you.
Yeah, I can see where they could win on that, Todd, because, all these big companies are self-insured. So if they could find a way to raise your insurance and kick you out of the game, then, hey, unless you work for them, then or work for them or with them, then you're against them, right? So it's almost the Star Wars, and there's the Dark Vader, and Oh no, this is good. One more time for that website, and I'll put that website down. I'll put OIDA's website down. I've been listening to a lot of things you've been talking about, Todd, and so far I like what I hear, and I've been listening for a while. I got some friends. My buddy Greg was the president of the California Trucking Association a couple of years ago. He's a good friend of mine. He said, Alex, you need to call up a guy like Todd. A guy like Todd could get you to the right places, because this is all new for me. I've never spoke in front of anybody or did anything. All I did was, honestly, people had some gripes. I made a couple videos about them, and now I don't know what it is, but it's like we're fighting the same fight, but I'm just doing it independently.
Well, hey, we're stronger together.
I love it.
So again, join OOIDA. It's our website for activists is fightingfortruckers.com. And again, there are a whole lot of us, and we have so much in common. And we have so much on the line, so much at stake. So, we need to push back in the manner that actually gets results.
Oh, I love it. No, I appreciate it so much. On the show today, a president right here, OIDA, Todd Spencer. Thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate you.
Hey, glad to be part of it, and anytime now.
No.